Live from the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Albaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Albaugh.
Good morning across the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide, the Civic Media app. I'm Todd Albaugh. It is Monday, May 1st, 2023. Welcome you into hour number 3, along with our producer and engineer, Mr. Aaron Zommers. We have made it to hour 3, Mr. Zommers, on what is now a rainy and overcast day here at the World Headquarters on University Avenue in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, definitely is. I can see the puddles forming outside.
It is not a nice day.
You know, they say April showers bring May flowers, but so far we're not even caught up on the showers yet. We're still getting snow in a lot of the state.
Exactly. April or May snow showers may bring June flowers. That's kind of
May snow showers may bring seasonal depression.
Oh, jeez. Way to be positive there. Yes, well, it's true though, right? As I've said before, I'm a very light-oriented kind of guy. So if it's dark and gloomy, that has an effect on my persona sometimes.
Yeah, it does for a lot of people, myself included. You got to get one of those sad lamps, seasonal
Right?
affective disorder.
Yeah, it just has brightness all the time. I thought about it. I thought about doing those.
You can get them that are pretty cheap, and you just do like 10, 15 minutes in the morning. Mm-hmm. It can make a real difference.
All right, well, maybe this winter or this fall, when we turn the clocks back, maybe we'll do that. We'll make that a bit on the show. We'll see if a seasonal lamp helps Todd wake up and be in a better mood.
And me too, because I have one and I don't use it, which very helpful.
Very helpful, yeah. All right, well, we'll do that experiment. We'll share it with our listeners this fall. We'll see whether a sad lamp makes a difference when we turn back the clocks this fall. More close to home, though, or more pertinent for your day today, it is not going to feel like summer today, unfortunately. In Richland Center, WRCE, news from the center, breezy, slight snow chance. Rain showers mixed. No major accumulation in Richland Center today, but a snowflake will be in the air. A high today of 50 degrees. Then for tonight, decreasing clouds, breezy, a low of 36. And tomorrow, Tuesday, partly sunny and breezy, a high of 53 degrees. Up in Wausau, WXCO, Bull Falls, Radioland, snow showers continue throughout the day, on and off. Windy conditions, rain mixed in. Again, maybe a quarter of an inch on the grassy areas, but it doesn't look like any major accumulations in Wausau. But not too far north of there, could be several inches of snow. And also towards Green Bay, down to the Fox Valley, 2-3 inches possible today. A high today in Wausau of 40 degrees. Then for tonight, cloudy, breezy, mostly cloudy, low of 32. And tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly cloudy, a high of 44. In Wausau. Over in Amory, WLAK Lake Air Radio, mostly cloudy and breezy, a high of 50. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy and breezy, clear, a low of 33. And Tuesday, sunny and breezy, a high of 55 degrees. So that's over at Amory. So hang in there, though, because the weather will be nicer. It's going to feel more like summer once we get into Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures in the upper 60s, maybe even the low 70s, and sun. So if I had a choice, I'll take weather today and sun on the weekends. So let's look at it in a positive, half glass full kind of way. Look forward to the weekend for sure. Also, wanted to make a note here to the Milwaukee Brewers. We're on the verge of getting the sweep of the series with the Los Angeles Angels at Anaheim. Brewers came up just a little short yesterday in Milwaukee. Brewers lost and now go on the road, but hopefully a good time was had by all. Robert at Richland Center, nice note. I think he had a good time. Hopefully he found some friends to go with he and his wife. Appreciate everybody listening in on the Brewers Radio Network on the Civic Media Radio Network. Remember, you can listen to the Brewers all season long on WRCE 1450 on the AM side, FM 107.7 in Southwest Wisconsin. And over in the Valley, the Fox Valley, Oshkosh Air Support, the Big 1100 on AM 1100, covers a lot of eastern Wisconsin, all up and down the Fox Valley and beyond. You can listen to the Brewers all season long on Oshkosh Air Support and WRCE News from the Center. appreciate our sponsors as well that make all those games happen. And, of course, you for listening. Stay tuned. Next homestand for the Brewers, we will have more tickets to give away, not just on our program, but throughout the Civic Media Radio Network in Richland Center, not just on RCE, but on the FM side, WRCL, Phil Nee, giving away tickets to the Brewers all season long as well. So throughout the Civic Media family, we are making sure that, as Laverne and Shirley used to say, making our dreams come true, or making your brewer dreams come true. So we've got that going for us. A couple of news headlines for you, what you need to know on the 1st of May. J.P. Morgan Chase buying most assets of First Republic Bank in a deal announced today after the bank became the third in the U.S. to fail since March. J.P. Morgan said it had acquired, quote, the substantial majority of assets and assumed deposits, insured and uninsured, of First Republic from the FDIC, the independent government agency that insures deposits for bank customers. In Texas, more than 250 officers from multiple law enforcement agencies are searching for the gunman accused of shooting and killing 5 people, including a young child, at a Cleveland, Texas home after neighbors asked him to stop firing his rifle outdoors. The father of the child killed told CNN that he and 2 others walked over to the suspect's home and asked that he shoot his gun on the other side of his yard because the gunfire was making his baby cry. However, the suspect refused, charged into their home, and opened fire. He then fled the scene without leaving a trace. $80,000 reward being offered that leads to information for the 38-year-old suspect's arrest. Back with more after this, including a look at who might be getting into the presidential race and what have you left in your Uber, and your calls as well. This is the Todd Albaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to the Todd Albaugh Show. It is now 10:15 on the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along with us on a Monday, May 1st, 2023. Want to button up a couple of things here from last hour before we move on to issues on this hour. First of all, kind of an update, if you will, on this story I've been telling you about this morning, this Texas shooting. And just it's beyond tragic. It's just a mean-spirited story on top of it. I mean, a guy's fired off his AR-15. Fired it off. I believe it was early in the evening. Neighbor walks over and says, hey, could you please go to the... Doesn't even tell him to stop. Just says, can you go on the other side of your house and do that because my baby is crying. The guy goes over and attacks his family and starts killing him. One of the people in the house, a mom, threw herself on top of her children to protect them. She is dead. The 2 kids that she laid on top of survived. An 8-year-old boy was killed in the house as well. Governor Greg Abbott, Republican of Texas, put out a statement saying that he had announced a reward for, quote, the criminal who killed 5 illegal immigrants on Friday, unquote.
What a piece of trash.
Right? To him, these aren't even humans. They're just 5 illegal immigrants. Simply based, I assume, on the color of their skin, that they happen to be Latinos. Well, now comes word this morning. Reporter says, I just spoke to the husband of one of the victims. He confirmed to me that his wife was a permanent resident of the United States. He even sent me a picture of her ID confirming this. But I guess Greg Abbott, anyone who is from another country, is quote-unquote an illegal immigrant. Shameful. Writes Carlos Eduardo Espina. And he includes the photo, the old slang for it was green card, because they used to have a green hue to them, and I guess kind of in a way they still do. It's a permanent resident card issued by the United States of America for his wife, originally from Honduras. Date of birth, 31st of August, 2001. Has been a permanent resident since December of 2021. and her permanent residency was good until 2032. A legal resident of the United States of America was shot in Texas, and Greg Abbott simply refers to her as, quote unquote, an illegal immigrant based on the color of her skin. We talk about a narrative all the time on this show. That's it. That's the narrative of hate. Judging a person by their name, their last name, and the color of their skin. Well, they must be an illegal immigrant. These are the types of quote-unquote leaders, which they're not, that we have to rise up and take on at the ballot box and vote these people out. These are the people that folks in our communities that still consider themselves Republicans, I don't believe they go along with that. We need you in the fight to say, I'm sick and tired of people like this, quote unquote, leading my party. I'm going to help vote them out. You have any idea how hard it is, how much work it is to become a permanent resident of the United States of America? I worked in immigration, in Congress, did immigration issues. At one time, pre-9/11, I would have considered myself an expert in immigration. But since they changed a lot of the laws after 9/11, I'm familiar, but I'm not an expert in the law or immigration issues. But I am very familiar with them. And in fact, it's harder now post 9/11 to become a U.S. resident. Then you have to wait at least 5 years before you apply to be a naturalized citizen. And how many times have we heard Republican leaders in this country talk about, well, they have to do it the right way. We have to stop all this illegal immigration because they got to follow the rules. Well, guess what? Deanna Alvarado did. Deanna J. Velasquez Alvarado followed the rules in Texas. She was a permanent U.S. resident. I have her card in front of me, a photo of it. She was shot dead by her neighbor because her husband asked the guy to go on the other side of the house to fire off his AR-15 to get his jollies. And her governor, Deanna Alvarado's governor, in her death, refers to her as an illegal immigrant because of her name and the color of her skin. That's the Republican Party today. That's the leadership of the Republican Party today. And that's what we have to change. And I put a button on this article we were talking about last hour from Heather Cox Richardson. I'd encourage you to follow her on social media and read some of these articles. Fantastic writing. She lays out the game plan very well. And how this all ties together. I want to read a couple more paragraphs. The process of taking control of the states by choosing who could vote got stronger today, this was over the weekend, when the North Carolina Supreme Court, now controlled by Republicans, revisited an earlier ruling concerning partisan gerrymandering. Overruling the previous decision, the court green-lighted partisan gerrymandering. Let me say that again. The sitting North Carolina Supreme Court green-lighted, in other words, gave the okay for partisan gerrymandering, opening the door for even more extreme gerrymanderers in the future. The court also okayed voter restrictions that primarily affect black people. It is 2023, and we have court systems today in this country that are okaying voting restrictions that primarily affect black people. Ever heard of Jim Crow? The bad history of this country? And now do you understand, or does this help you understand why Republicans are attacking education? And they blow up this whole thing, call it critical race theory. Essentially, what they are trying to do is not teach American history to young people. They don't want them to know the bad along with the good. Because if you don't know the history, then when Republican leaders and politicians tell you something, you believe it. Is it any wonder why Republican leaders and many politicians in this country are banning books, not trying to anymore, are banning complete sections of libraries? Because they don't want our kids to know American history. They don't want them to know that these types of things happened before in American history, and we rose above it. And we passed legislation, and get this, the kicker. It was Republicans in Congress in the late 60s that worked with Lyndon Baines Johnson to pass the Civil Rights Act. Because Democrats at that time, a lot of the Southern Democrats didn't want it. Republicans today don't want our kids to know the history of the Republican Party.
But they do want them to work.
Oh, yeah, they want them to work, especially if they're 12, 13, 14. But you see how this all fits together? And that's what we're trying to do here. Just simply lay out the pieces of the puzzle for you and explain in a rational way how they fit together without hyperbole, without trying to go too far over the top. Just present you with the truth. And once you see how the puzzles all work together, you see how it fits into this narrative that the Republican Party and the Republican Party leaders do not have a coherent plan. They don't have an agenda that clicks with the majority of Americans today. So the only way that they can win, the only way that they can hang on to power is to control the courts, to uphold the illegal gerrymandering so that they pick the voters, and you, the voter, us, the voter, we, the voter, don't pick the politician. It's a rigged, set-up system that favors a minority of Republicans. I don't believe all Republicans think this way. I really don't. I know some that don't. And that's why it was such a huge election in Wisconsin last month to get Janet Protasiewicz elected. Because it showed that people will come out, particularly Gen Z, the college kids, young people, will join forces with the rest of the electorate and say no to this kind of stuff. That's what it's about. Exercising democracy to keep democracy healthy. Because this all fits together on the Republican side. And it starts with people like Governor Greg Abbott, who are saying ridiculous things like calling someone an illegal immigrant based on their last name and the color of their skin. May that family rest in peace. And may the God from which they believe in, if they do, comfort them at this extraordinary loss. And hopefully the person that brought this upon this family will be captured soon and justice will be served. These are the tough stories we have to talk about. And we have to be truthful of what's going on and be willing to look at it. We can't ban books. We can't ban history. We can't be afraid of our past and what's happened before. Otherwise, how the heck are we going to get better? have to be willing to admit what went wrong in order to be better. That's what's made our country great. And we've looked back and said, yeah, that wasn't so good. We did this and this okay, but that wasn't so great. So let's change that. Let's make it better. That's how we all get along. We'll be back with more after this. Stay with us. This is the Todd Albaugh Show, and this is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Call your mom, buy a book, drink a beer, sing a song, make a friend. Can't we all get along?
Show is now 10:33 on May 1st. CBS News reporting this morning after 50 years, 10 world tours, and playing for over 100 million fans, it's time for one last go. After more than 5 decades together, Aerosmith, the band you heard there, has announced a farewell tour. And if it goes well, they'll do another. No, that's kind of the way some of these bands go, right? Oh, we're going to do a farewell tour. And then it becomes phenomenally successful. And they're like, well, maybe we'll do another farewell tour. But let's take them at their word. Aerosmith saying after 50 years, they're doing a farewell tour. Jeff Perry texts in and says, Aerosmith, same great band, just easier to see them from the back row. So there you go. Very good. I like me a little Aerosmith. Nothing wrong with that. How about you, Mr. Zommers?
Yeah, solid. Like a lot of their riffs and bass lines and everything are iconic. Like this, who doesn't love this guitar riff?
Right.
From Walk This Way.
Yeah, it's a great riff.
However, I will say they have a couple songs that are really annoying.
Such as?
Dream On is really the big one.
Really, you don't like Dream On?
I've heard it too many times. It's just like dream on, dream on, dream on, dream on, dream on.
I think you have to be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, you do. I just have heard it when I'm in the wrong frame of mind too much.
I think it's one of those songs like, you know, if it's a sunny summer afternoon and you're driving down the open road, you got the windows down and you're just screaming by yourself in the car or the truck. I mean, dream on, dream. I mean, it's, you know, you just go at it. A little solo carpool karaoke, which is also the story of my love life, but that's another story. But yeah, I mean, you can't, I don't mind, but I agree. If it's just a rainy afternoon, maybe you don't want to hear Dream On at 10:35 in the morning. I get that. But anyway, Aerosmith's saying they're done. After that done, they're going to do a farewell tour after 50 years. Making news this morning. Question for you right now, if you want to call in, we'll talk about anything, of course, but are you satisfied with the current level of presidential candidates for 2024? And if not, who would you like to see run? 715-388-7155. Again, area code 715-388-7155. Are you satisfied with the amount of presidential candidates so far? And if not, who do you want to see run for president in 2024? Republican or Democrat? Doesn't matter. 715-388-7155. Give us a call. Mr. Zommers will take your call off the air. He'll give me the high sign, the old Little Rascals high sign. You ever watch Little Rascals?
Yeah, that's a good movie.
The high sign there. Looks like a little woodchuck thing. Anyway, Mr. Zommers will give me the high sign, and we'll put you on the air. 715-388-7155. Are you satisfied with the presidential candidates thus far? If not, who should jump in? 715-388-7155. I said when I talked about this earlier, Rick Scott jumping in. There's too many Scotts going on. So, yeah, Rick Scott, the former governor of Florida, now a U.S. senator, is so far not getting in, although there are rumors that he might think about it. He, of course, is the architect of the Republican plan to get rid of Social Security or to at least greatly change it. And, of course, now he wants to walk that back. But Ron Johnson is part of that.
No, he doesn't want to walk it back. He's being forced to walk it back.
That's a more accurate way to say it. Thank you, Mr. Somers. And, of course, Ron Johnson brought hook, line, and sinker into the old Rick Scott plan. The guy who's thinking about running is Tim Scott. Tim Scott. And I believe Rick Scott spells it S-C-O-T-T. Tim Scott is S-C-O-T. We are now a year and a half away from the 2024 presidential election, and more Republicans are getting involved. Last week, former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson declared himself a candidate to a little fanfare. I don't think we even talked about it. But Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas, in the race. Hutchinson is likely a long shot to become the Republican nominee, but let's give him some credit for saying that Donald Trump is doing major damage to the Republican Party, or at least the remnants of what used to be a major political party, and Trump should sit down and shut up. That's essentially what Asa Hutchinson is saying. And again, let's give him a little credit for that. Well, Hutchinson isn't quite that blunt, but he's pretty clear about the need for the Republican Party to look to the future, a future without Trump. Another Republican with presidential ambitions is Tim Scott, the junior senator from South Carolina. A few weeks ago, Scott said he was forming an exploratory committee for president. So what the heck is an exploratory committee? And does it mean Scott's running or what? According to Nathaniel Rake of 538.com, an exploratory committee is, quote, essentially a half measure for the indecisive. That's pretty good. A half measure for the indecisive. It enables a person to raise money, hire a staff, and conduct polls, but without being a candidate officially. So one benefit of an exploratory committee is that it does not have to report to the Federal Election Commission, although they are required to follow FEC rules. It comes down to basically numbers and how you manage your fundraising. If a non-candidate subsequently takes action to get on state ballots, then they are a candidate and must report all their financial activity, retroactive to the exploratory phase. Asa Hutchinson and Democrat Marianne Williamson are recent examples of presidential hopefuls who became a candidate without bothering with an exploratory committee. Most presidential hopefuls who do form an exploratory committee go on to become a candidate officially. Very rare for someone to say, well, I'm exploring it, but after several months and touring around the country and raising a lot of money, I've decided to sit it out. I honestly cannot remember when that happened. When someone formed an exploratory committee and then said no. If someone forms an exploratory committee for anything, there's a 95% chance or greater they're going to run for office. All right? The biggest advantage of an exploratory committee is that it gives a candidate an extra opportunity to garner some social media attention. It's essentially an effort to get your name out there with two announcements instead of one. That is kind of one of the holy grails for politicians. Because most of the time, you only get one announcement shot, right? So you say you're going to run, and the media shows up with the TV cameras, hopefully, and you get your big plug, and you get an article in the paper and online. You get your announcement. If you're really good at politics, if your team is good, you might get two shots at an announcement. Hillary Clinton kind of did that. And because of her name and recognition, she kind of got a twofer. When she was doing the exploratory, and then when she actually announced her main official run. So first, you announce your exploratory committee, and then second, you announce that you've decided to launch an actual campaign, right? Those who skip the exploratory committee step often take an alternative approach. First, they announce they're a candidate, and second, they hold a campaign kickoff rally, hoping the rally gets broad media coverage. But it's hard to swing that one. Examples of this approach include Senator Kamala Harris, Senator Cory Booker, Senator Bernie Sanders in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary. So they all said, look, I'm a candidate, and then they did the kickoff rally. Notice Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and Bernie Sanders are not president. Kamala Harris, vice president, turned out okay for her. But, not the norm. The advantage of the approach is that several major media sources, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, give little coverage to a Tim Scott or anyone else until they say the two magical words, I'm running. I'm running. That's what media folks want to hear. Want to hear, I'm running. There's been candidates before that kind of made it sexy, kind of drug it out. I mean, I think about, what's his name? The former mayor of New York, Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg. I always think of David Letterman. He always brought Michael, very short man, very small man. Michael Bloomberg. I mean, there is a guy worth millions. I mean, an actual legitimate billionaire. Unlike Donald Trump, Michael Bloomberg, an actual billionaire. A lot of name recognition, the Bloomberg Network, mayor of New York, had done some good things. But boy, there is a guy who just did not connect with people. Just didn't know how to speak. And maybe it's because he's a really smart guy. And sometimes smart people just can't relate well to your average person because they live in different spheres. They live in different worlds. Sometimes, a guy like Trump that has nothing in common with the average voter finds the rhetoric that connects with them. And sometimes there are people like Barack Obama that come along once in a generation that came up poor, that actually understands people and can relate to them. And they get them. You got guys like George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, who maybe were half and half, had some privilege, but was exposed to kind of some normal stuff too, but just were likable people. Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, very different people in many ways. But they had this knack to kind of connect with the average guy and gal. Presidential politics are a weird thing. Remember in 2020, when Joe Biden could barely fill a small room in Iowa? A lot of people said he's toast. Too old, not going to do it. Pete Buttigieg wins Iowa, stuns people. I believe came in a very close second in New Hampshire. Joe Biden and then Bernie Sanders won Nevada. But then it was South Carolina where Joe Biden's presidential politics was resurrected and propelled him onto the nomination and the presidency. Are you satisfied with Joe Biden and Donald Trump as your nominees? What do you think about Rick Scott? Or what do you think about Tim Scott, for that matter? Tim Scott, the guy who's actually going to run. Maybe Rick Scott will, too. Asa Hutchinson, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. What do you think about this field? 715-388-7155. Again, area code 715-388-7155. Would love to hear from you this morning on if you're satisfied with this mix of presidential folks. And by the way, the more Republicans that get in, it only helps Trump. He's loving this. I'm sure he has people encouraging others to run behind the scenes. Because remember, Trump's base is somewhere between 30 and 40% of people. 30 to 40% of the Republican Party are going to be with Trump no matter what. So if he's got 30%, 35% of each primary election, and you've got 6 other candidates dividing up the rest, it's a cakewalk for the Trumpster to the Republican nomination. And we're already seeing DeSantis tank, right? Just becoming a caricature of himself. Not a surprise, nor is it unexpected, but still. And if you're Joe Biden, I think you're loving this too. Because I think the guy you want to go up against in general, if you're Joe Biden, is Donald Trump. You've done it before. You beat him once. And he's only more wacky now than he was before. He led an insurrection against this country. So we shall see. When we come back, have you taken an Uber before? I drove Uber for a while. Actually, a cool job. And have you left something in Uber? We'll come back with a list of things people have left behind in their Ubers and take your phone call. Stay with us. This is the Todd Allball Show, and this is the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to the Todd Allball Show. It is now 10:50 on the Civic Media Radio Network. That is 10 minutes before 11 o'clock. That is 10 minutes before an all-new edition of As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry coming up at the top of the hour along with Jane Matnair. They will bring you the latest in news across the state of Wisconsin, what happened over the weekend. Take a lighter look at the news, make you laugh a little bit as well, make you just feel better. Just feel better for listening. If you're having a gloomy morning and you say, it's a crappy day outside, I'm kind of in a funk, you want to get defunked? Tune in to Kristen and Jane at 11:06 on As Goes Wisconsin. If they can't defunk you, no one can. Because I tune them in because I feel better. Feel better after listening to them. They make me smile, make me laugh, always learn something as well. It's As Goes Wisconsin from 11 until 2. At 2 o'clock on Bull Falls Radio, WXCO in Wausau, Chad Holmes brings you the news from Central Wisconsin on the Chad Holmes Show. News, weather, sports, happenings around the Wausau area. Probably talk a little bit about the snowy conditions just north of Wausau this morning. Chad Holmes from 2 until 4. On the rest of the Civic Media Radio Network then, at 2 o'clock, our friends Luke and Brian will bring you Dueling Tangents. From 2 until 3. Always fun to catch up. They'll do a weekend review, find out what happened, a little dumpster diving perhaps over the weekend. Go off on a tangent here and there. Make you laugh as well. Dueling Tangents from 2 until 3. At 3 o'clock, as soon as the show starts, the lines are open. All callers welcome. Matt Flynn Direct. Great information. You're not woke if you don't know history. Matt always teaches us something from 3 until 4. At 4 o'clock, then, is the Devil's Advocates with Crudy and Dom. It's never personal, only politics. The Devil's Advocates. At 6 o'clock, then, Native Roots Radio. Great Native American perspective on all things. And at 8 o'clock, then, the Rick Smith Show across America. Another great lineup on the Civic Media Radio Network. Have you ever, Mr. Zombers, ever taken an Uber?
I have. Not a ton, but a few times. No, I have not left anything on it, nor did any of the people I was with.
All right, very good. I drove Uber for about 2 years, for a little while, for my full-time job. And when I was in between jobs, I was still doing it as a part-time gig until the pandemic came along, and then I'm just not gonna. Officially, I still have the sticker. I can still do it. I haven't driven Uber since pre-pandemic. But I've told people, if you've never done it before, everyone should try driving Uber for at least a while.
Well, maybe not everyone. I've had some Uber drivers that should not be in vehicles.
All right.
Or should certainly not be driving them.
Fair enough. But most people, I found it to be an enlightening experience. I was very apprehensive about it at first, but I limited myself. I did not drive generally after 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I think there were 2 or 3 times I went to like 12:30 in the morning. But I told people I like to drive people to the bars. I don't enjoy picking them up from the bars. So I was fortunate. I never had anybody puke or things like that in my truck. I for the most part, I had a couple of rude people, but most of all, it was a fun time. I picked up a pair of college kids at UW one night. I don't know, it's 10:30, 11. Guy and a girl, and they were clearly a couple. And they'd had a couple, but they were being responsible and taking an Uber. And he gets in, he goes, "Dude, sweet truck. What's her name?" I'm like, I don't have a name. He goes, "Dude, you got to name her, dude. I name everything, like my car and like my plants." I'm like, "You name your plants?" "Oh, dude, my plants are all named." So you just get fantastic conversations like that. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, Uber has released its annual list of items forgotten by some passengers and cars, and it includes some truly bizarre items, including an ankle monitor,
I don't think the last one was forgotten.
No, fingernails, and even a slushy machine. Who forgets a slushy machine?
That's a good question.
The rideshare company published its 2023 Uber Lost and Found Index last week. As Mercury makes its way back into retrograde, a time of year astrologists say influences forgetfulness, according to Uber. The index is based on missing item reports filed by passengers. The 10 most forgotten items come as no surprise and includes phones, wallets, keys, jewelry, and headphones. Pretty common, right? I mean, you think, well, that's easy to forget. But their list of the 50 most unique items lost is where things get a little weird. One of them includes a Danny DeVito Christmas ornament. Didn't even know I had one of those. Also, a fire sword. I'm not even sure what that is, but it sounds dangerous.
Me either.
I'm not making this up. 50 most unique items lost in Uber. A remote-controlled vibrator. Oh, that's where that went. All right, perhaps I'll call in later. Chicken wings. Forgot their chicken wings. 6 cheesecakes. Not 4, not 5, but 6 cheesecakes. A painted rat trap. An important pregnancy test. I mean, you're taking your pregnancy test in your Uber?
Well, they might not be taking it in there, but they were like, I'm waiting for the results. I need to know if I'm pregnant. And the Uber driver's like, okay. And then they leave the car and you're like, they left their pee stick back here.
Also forgotten, 50 most unique items lost in Uber include dentures. Dentures, perhaps also the same person that lost the remote-controlled vibrator. I'm not sure. A lightsaber, weed, and 1 Gucci loafer. Not 2, not a pair of Gucci loafers, but just 1 Gucci loafer. Jacksonville, Florida, took the top spot for being the most forgetful city. San Antonio, Texas, and Palm Springs, California, took the second and third spots, respectively. The most common time of day to report lost items is what, Mr. Zommers? Any guesses? When do people lose things the most?
Well, I'm sure they lose things at night.
Yeah, you're right. 11 p.m.
Gotcha, yeah.
11 p.m., which I thought would be a little bit later, like after bar time.
Yeah, me too. But I guess enough people are going home.
Maybe. Or maybe there are some people that go out at that time.
Right, yeah.
Right? I mean, there are some people, like I pick people up and like 10 o'clock. They're all dressed up. I'm like, oh, you're coming home? No, dude, we're going out. It showed me like, okay, I guess I'm old.
Yeah, sometimes my friends want to go out starting at like 9, and I'm like, dude, I normally am in bed by then.
Right? No. The annual report, which is in its 7th year, aims to remind passengers how to get lost items back using their Uber app. As you're getting going this summer, try to remember your belongings when you exit the back seat. In case you do lose a precious Danny DeVito Christmas ornament, a beloved pet toy poodle, or 6 cheesecakes, Uber is always happy to return those items, according to the spokesperson. The feature within the app, riders can report items as lost and contact drivers to have them returned. It costs you $15 to get them back, though. Of course, it's up to passengers to decide if fingernails or chicken wings are worth the price.
The Danny DeVito ornament, though.
Yeah, but the Danny DeVito ornament, you want that back. I can't remember a passenger ever leaving anything in my truck in their Uber ride, because I always tried to say, you got everything before they got out.
Right.
So you try to be a good Uber driver. Stay tuned. A great Uber host is Kristen Bry, along with Jane Matnair. As Goes Wisconsin is next. We'll see you tomorrow. This is the Todd Allball Show, and this is the Civic Media Radio Network.